Things are not determined by situations. We determine ourselves by the meanings we ascribe to situations. In other words, it's as if we are characters in our own fiction, placing value on pivotal events because it ultimately shapes who we become. And it is through this unconscious story that we form a basis in which we judge ourselves and our happiness or dissatisfaction with certain outcomes. This introductory statement is quite relevant to our next psychological character analysis, because Griffith is a person who attributes a tremendous amount of worth to his life, seeing himself as the future king of Midland. And it is from this well of confidence that Griffith draws his courage and conviction to accomplish any set task that is placed in front of him. We don't know much about Griffith's childhood, but from the information provided, we know that he came from humble beginnings and always had his eyes set on a brighter, more accomplished future. And it is because he believed himself to be a truly extraordinary man that his bubbling confidence overflowed into his comrades' hearts and minds, establishing a bond that made Griffith's dream everyone's dream. The Band of the Hawk flourished during this epoch, gaining the reputation of an invincible regimen that could not be deterred from its goal. Eventually, the Band of the Hawk defeated its most fearsome foe, the Purple Rhino Knights, and captured Doldry Castle, effectively ending the 100-Year War with the Tudor army. The King of Midland, henceforth, recognized Griffith's profound contributions to the war effort, granting him the title of general, much to the dismay of the royal court. Yet Griffith was not one to rest on his laurels, as he focused his gaze on his new adversary, the Queen of Midland. Griffith's subsequent conspiracy to eliminate all those who impeded his path toward attaining glory was the first critical moment in understanding his psychological state and his eventual downfall. We must remember that before Griffith scrubbed the filth from the Midland court, he was viewed as an altruistic person whom harbored no resentment or hatred. But all men, especially the supposed perfect ones, contain a darkness within their heart that, if left unchecked, could resemble the iniquitous devil archetype. Griffith managed this inner demon via delegating the dirty work for an assortment of nasty mercenaries and guts. And for the time, it allowed Griffith to superimpose his inner beast onto others, especially Guts, so that he could maintain his immaculate, godlike image to others. Yet this changed when Guts decided to leave the Band of the Hawk, leaving Griffith with no outlet in which he could discharge his malevolent shadow energy. Immediately afterwards, Griffith succumbed to his inner beast, performing an aggressive sexual act that was strangely uncharacteristic of the level-headed leader of the Band of the Hawk. The shadow is a living part of the personality and therefore wants to live with it in some form. It cannot be argued out of existence or rationalized into harmlessness. This problem is exceedingly difficult because it not only challenges the whole man, but reminds him at the same time of his helplessness and ineffectuality. The spiritual hell that dwelled deep within Griffith's unconsciousness became a physical manifestation when he became ensnared in the Midland torture chamber. After all, one cannot live a purely altruistic, godlike life without begetting the direct opposite to balance out the variance. Griffith's mistake was that he believed he could separate the two, instead of discovering a manner in which he could incorporate both elements into his being. These diverging mindsets eventually reached their limit, shearing each other off, thus begetting a split personality. And this split occurred during the initiation of the eclipse, when Griffith was placed inside of an egg to give birth to this new entity. In alchemy, the egg stands for chaos apprehended by the artifacts, the prima materia containing the captive world soul. Out of the egg, symbolized by the round cooking vessel, will rise the eagle or phoenix, the liberated soul, which is ultimately identical with the anthropos, who is imprisoned in the embrace of physis. For those unfamiliar with the terminology, artifacts refers to an expert practitioner of art, i.e. a creator. Prima materia is a projection of the unconscious, and captive world soul refers to the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is where all the archetypes reside. The stories that are passed down through generations that serve a vital purpose in teaching us the lessons of life. Usually these stories take the form of polytheistic gods. These stories then take physical form in religious manuscripts, which in Christianity is called the Gospel, which is derived from the Anglo-Saxon Godspell, meaning good story. Therefore, we could reconfigure the first statement as follows. The chaos apprehended by the Creator, the projection of the unconscious via a good story. Now, let's decipher the second sentence. Out of the egg, symbolized by the round cooking vessel, will rise the eagle or the phoenix or the hawk, the liberated soul, which is ultimately identical with the anthropos. Now, anthropos refers to the original man in his ideal, archetypal totality, and one of the symbols of the self. If you watch my Evangelion analysis, you'll know that Jesus Christ is also a symbol of the self. But just like all humans have their unconscious opposite, so does the Son of God, in the form of the devil. As evidence, Jung makes the following observation. Regarding the problem of evil and power, it has always struck me as significant that Macht, power, is derived from Machen, to make. And since making is a specific activity of man, one might come to the conclusion that the characteristic expression of human life bears the stamp of evil, and that in consequence, the anthropos is really Lucifer. The sentiment of Griffith exhibiting Christ-like qualities in his day-to-day affairs and Luciferianism in his night dealings speaks to an inseparable link between the two. If we remember the story of Christ, after his purely altruistic life, he dies on the cross and makes a 3-day journey into the depths of hell, where Jung postulates that he encounters and becomes his direct opposite, the Antichrist. What Christ kept apart in his conscious life is reconciled in the unconscious underworld. Only then is he permitted to ascend to heaven. If you want to go to heaven, your feet will grow in hell. The same must happen to Griffith. He must dynamically integrate the dark aspects of femto into his conscious physical being. After all, Jesus and Lucifer are both considered the morning star, bringers of light. And even Griffith makes the keen observation in chapter 6. But if you look at it a different way, it might be proof that there's some huge something beyond human understanding in this world. For instance, what are called gods? Guts responds in kind. Don't you mean devils? To which Griffith retorts, who knows? Aren't they the same thing? This point is emphasized further in chapter 303, when Ganeshka comes face to face with Griffith and remarks, "You can see, because he who bears light exists in the deepest shadows, and it's within darkness that true light is discovered." One more concept that I would like to touch upon in regards to Griffith is the idea of the caduceus. Refer to chapter 127 to see an image of what I am talking about. The caduceus is a staff that has 2 snakes that are intertwined while copulating. It promotes a union of opposites, the integration of the male and female spirits. It also incorporates the bravery of a divine bird, such as an eagle, falcon, or hawk, and the wisdom of an underworld snake. Or, as it states on the emerald tablet, that which is below is like that which is above. From a psychological view, it means that which occurs in the external world affects our internal being via storing memories. Those memories, in turn, are used as a reference point for future external situations. The purported author of the tablet in question is Hermes Trismegistus, and he's also associated with the mythological Greek god Hermes. And it just so happens that Hermes bears the caduceus staff. Now, as for a little bit of background information, as an Olympic deity, Hermes was a messenger of the gods who was very playful. He was often referred to as a trickster god, since he stole Poseidon's trident, Artemis's arrows, and Apollo's cattle. That last one happened on his first day of life, mind you. To be a trickster, however, one must be extremely cunning and possess great knowledge, which he did. Hermes is also synonymous with the Greco-Roman god Mercurius, who is hermaphroditic, both good and evil, and filled the world with light, yet remained in the shadows. Perhaps Hermes' most interesting role is that of a psychopomp, or a soul guide in the afterlife, which means the mythological Hermes had connections to the underworld. From a psychological stance, he is the mediator between the personal psyche and the unconscious. He is the bringer of sleep and dreams, as noted by the circle on top of the caduceus, representing the pineal gland, which produces melatonin and induces sleep. Now, if we match all this information to Griffith, we notice remarkable similarities. The playful nature of Griffith, the wealth of knowledge he possesses, the embodiment of masculine and feminine qualities and characteristics, the fact he tricked his comrades during the eclipse, and it is also interesting that Hermes wore winged sandals and was a god of wind and was associated with a hawk, among other animals. Furthermore, in chapter 335, we see Griffith perform a miracle for the inhabitants of Falconia, in which he allows families to say goodbye to the dead spirits of their loved ones. Meaning, Griffith is also a psychopomp, just like Hermes. Additionally, Griffith has the ability to enter dream space. One instance of note happened in chapter 138 when he sliced off one of Zod's horns with a gust of wind that resembled the caduceus. Then he looked inquiringly aloft, for he heard above him the sharp call of a bird, and behold, an eagle swept through the air in wide circles, and on it hung a serpent, not like prey, but like a friend, for it kept itself coiled around the eagle's neck. "They are mine animals," said Zarathustra, and rejoiced in his heart. "The proudest animal under the sun, and the wisest animal under the sun. They have come out to reconnoiter." As we can see, the ubiquitous nature of the caduceus in Berserk and other symbolic elements points to a connection between Griffith and Hermes. Therefore, Griffith, with his higher level of godlike understanding and power, is on a mountaintop above all men. Or, as Hermes stated, "If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God. For like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself grown to a like expanse, with that greatness which is beyond all measure. But if you shut up your soul in your body, and abase yourself, and say, 'I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven, I know not what I was, nor what I shall be,' then what have you to do with God?"
For me to call a man my friend, he must be equal to me in all respects.
Griffith has scaled the highest mountains to surpass all of man's limitations. He has embraced all the aspects of good and evil to transcend traditional morality and create a value system that benefits the great majority. And he has captured the imaginations of his comrades and loyal subjects to accomplish any task that he aims his sights on. However, Griffith, unlike the god he emulates, Hermes, has not symbiotically incorporated his opposites. Rather, he has ripped them asunder, thus creating an irreconcilable split personality in which he does not represent the self, but a pair of divided opposites, i.e. Griffith and Femto. This is very similar to what happened in Death Note with Light and Kira.
Exactly as planned.
He did embrace both good and evil, but he had to split his personality into two halves. He did not blend it into one psyche, and the same is happening with Griffith. And to verify this statement, consider the caduceus in chapter 127 to the caduceus of Hermes. Notice that Hermes' caduceus blends the bravery of an eagle and the wisdom of a snake in perfect harmony, much like Zarathustra did in Nietzsche's master work. Griffith's caduceus, however, has restricted the hawk's potential for flight by nailing it down on a cross with the snake-like behelit. It's a compulsory combination that will eventually need to be reconciled, lest Griffith wishes to sow the seeds to his eventual downfall. Yet, this begs the unavoidable question, can the perfect union of opposites occur in the human psyche? Or are we in a constant struggle of self-overcoming and redefining the truths that aid us in becoming greater versions of ourselves? And the bigger question beyond even this is whether or not we are authors of our own stories, or if we are inextricably linked to a predestined causal outcome. You would wish to be responsible for everything except for your dreams. What miserable weakness! What lack of logical courage! Nothing contains more of your own work than your dreams. Nothing belongs to you so much. Need I add the wise Oedipus was right, that we are really not responsible for our dreams any more than we are for our waking hours, and that the doctrine of free will has as its parents man's pride and sense of power.
In this world, is the destiny of mankind controlled by some transcendental entity or law? Is it like the hand of God hovering above? At least it is true that man has no control, even over his own will.
Thyself layeth at thine ego, and its proud prancings. What are these prancings and flights of thought unto me? It saith to itself, a byway to my purpose. I am the leading string of the ego and the prompter of its notions. Thank you for watching this psychoanalytical video about Griffith from Berserk. In the next episode, we're going to talk about chapter 83 and God himself. See you guys next time.